I'm sitting at my desk thinking about a research question for a research presentation when my phone rings and my husband's on the other end of the line. His voice is shaking and he says to me, "I think my mother is dying." So I offer to come up to help him and I scoop my 5-year old up. We jump in the car. I have less than 1 mile to explain to her what I'm possibly taking her to watch her grandmother die. And of all the things that are going through my head, what comes out of my mouth is, "Honey, grandma's really sick. I need you to be quiet. I need you to listen to me, and I need you to do what I say." None of those things even dealt with death or what she might see. My mother-in-law ended up having a mini stroke, and she's okay now, but we know that she's close to the end of her life. And as I came back home and I'm sitting there thinking about that research question again, the conversations that had been going on with my husband's siblings ran through my head, and there had been a great deal of conflict about money, about her will, about interventions at the end of the life, about hospice care, and there has been a great deal of conflict. Those conversations have not gone smoothly. People have been offended. And so I thought to myself, why is communicating about death so hard? And I think this is going to be my research question. I looked to 6 different sources to find answers about that, and I pinpointed 3 things that I think happen in communication about death that make it difficult. The first is emotions run high, and so communication is at risk. Number 2, there's a high chance of conflict with life and death decisions being made and various opinions. There's going to be some conflict. And 3, the story we tell ourselves about death it's scary. We're unsure, and when we tell ourselves a story like that, we are not good at communicating. It hinders how we feel. So I want to share what I've learned with you through my research, because I think everyone is going to be in a position where they need to have conversations about death and about people dying. So the 3 points again that I want to make is 1, emotions run high, so communication is at risk. Conflict is, there's a high chance of conflict because of life and death decisions that must be made. And the story we tell ourselves about death is really a scary one because we don't have all the answers. I'm going to start with emotions run high. Brene Brown in The Gifts of Imperfection 2010 said, "We have a need for certainty, and this lack of knowledge can lead to high emotions." Brene's personal way of dealing with that lack of uncertainty is to quote the Serenity Prayer in Al-Anon, found in Al-Anon 1995. "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." Often when it comes to lack of certainty, we need to just be able to accept. We need to accept what we don't know or what we can't have the answers to. And if we learn to accept that, that helps us deal with our emotions. Also in Crucial Conversations by Grenny et al. In 2002, it says, "Knowing what you're feeling helps you take a more accurate look at what is going on and why." We need to look beyond the basic emotions of happy, sad, and angry and dig deeper. Are we jealous? Are we angry? Or are we hurt? Does that come out as anger? Do we have some unresolved things that we need to deal with this person that's dying or that has died? There are probably hundreds of emotions, and we usually identify 4 or 5 of those. So to look deeper and identify the true emotion can help us when we're communicating if we really understand why we're feeling what we feel. Second, conflict. There's a high chance of conflict. In my husband's case, his siblings were arguing about some changes in the will. They were arguing about whether hospice care would be appropriate. They were arguing about who would be with his mother and when. And in the book Looking Out, Looking In by Adler and Proctor 2017, it identifies styles of conflict. And these styles of conflict can lead to win-win, win-lose, lose-lose, and partial win-win or partial lose-lose is really what it is, results. And so if we can identify our style of conflict, and if we can avoid 4 things: criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, those things will often spiral a conversation into problems. Then we can do better at trying to find an answer that is win-win, that's collaborating, and that helps everybody feel better. The point number 3, the story we tell ourselves. In Rising Strong by Brene Brown in 2015, she says, In the absence of data, we always make up stories. It's how we are wired. Death is the absence of data that can cause fear. And so, with the absence of data, we make up our own stories of what might happen after death. And for some of us, it's positive. For many of us, it's not positive, and it creates a difficult situation when we try to communicate about it. She also quotes Robert Burton, who explains, our brains reward us with dopamine for when we recognize and complete patterns. So in order to receive that dopamine for our brain, we tell ourselves a story that may not be true about death. So Robert Peacock, in developing manager of Good Life, Good Death, and Good Grief in 2019, says topics we might discuss that can help complete the story would be, where do you want to die? What medical interventions do you want or don't want? What type of care would you like to receive? If we start to ask these questions early, we can fill in the story with real answers that can help us to feel safe. By thinking and planning ahead, we can create an end to the story that we tell about death and dying. In conclusion, I want to look again at those 3 reasons that communication is hard surrounding death. 1, that emotions run high, and 2, there's a high chance of conflict, and number 3, the story that we tell ourselves. And the solutions to those reasons are, if we learn our emotions and we learn to accept the uncertainty that comes with death, we can lower the chance of communication problems. If we learn ways to deal with conflict styles better, then we can reduce the conflict. And if we tell ourselves a better story, if we're more prepared, we can tell ourselves a better story, and we can deal with death better. As the next day, I spent the day with my 19-year-old daughter, who is getting ready to leave for 18 months, and we talked about Grandma and the condition that she's in, and I was able to talk about death, and I was able to talk about the things that Grandma wanted done. And as my 19-year-old daughter visited with her grandmother for probably the last chance she's going to have, she was able to share her favorite memories and ask Grandma for her favorite memories, and they were able to say goodbye in a good atmosphere. And I think it's because of some of the things that I've learned and studied, and what I hope to take with me is that I can continue to do that I can continue my improvement, and that you can learn from this as you approach death and dying with your own family members.